My go-to tool for helping clients with reading comprehension difficulties is the SQ3R. Let's take a look. SQ3R stands for Survey, Question, Read, Recite, Review. This structured method of reading is the most appropriate for things like academic texts, research articles, or any written material that has subsections, diagrams, headings, practice questions, glossary terms, etc. Although SQ3R is probably best to use with those materials, there are some still golden nuggets within SQ3R that could be helpful for other kinds of reading. We're going to tap into survey and questions simultaneously because these processes, although they're listed separately, are actually happening pretty much at the same time. The reason why this tool is so helpful is because can you ever think of a time where you read a whole page and realized I haven't absorbed a single thing I just read? That's happened to me a few times. Lemony Snicket really did me dirty when he wrote, and then I read the same sentence again and again, and I read the same sentence again and again, and I read the same sentence again and again. And he did that on purpose like 4 times in a row, and I thought I was going crazy. Anyway, I digress. The reason why that happens is because you were not actively engaging with the text. You were just passively reading. Your eyes were doing what they were supposed to do. And while you may have seen some key words and like you know the words as you're reading them, you didn't get any of the message that was intended. By using SQ3R, we are now tapping into our active reading processes, which means we are engaging with the material in some way and making our brain actually do some work, which is going to then help your librarian encode it and put it where it's supposed to go with like information. Before you even start reading, you want to get a bird's eye view of what it is you're about to read. You are priming your brain, letting yourself know what to expect, what types of information you are going to come across in the grand scheme of things in the assigned chapter that you were supposed to read. You're going to read the title, headings, and subheadings, but at the same time that you're reading them, you want to be turning them into questions. The title of this handout is SQ3R Reading Method. You could simply turn it into a question by saying, what is the SQ3R Reading Method? And simply by turning it into a question, you are almost then like tricking yourself into being curious about what you're about to read. And it almost helps narrow your focus and your attention to be able to better predict or anticipate. While you survey, you should also read captions under pictures, charts, graphs, or maps. You should review questions or teacher-made study guides. Read the introductory and concluding paragraphs before you read the whole thing, or read the summary if it's available. Again, you are giving yourself a preview or a bird's eye view to prime your brain to get ready to receive information. It's almost like you're pointing to the spots in your library where the librarian is going to have to put the incoming books of information. So while you're doing this, you're also asking yourself, what did my instructor say about this subject or chapter? When was it assigned? And what do I already know about this subject? You're digging into your library and finding, what can I anticipate? What's relevant? What do I already know about this subject? A great thing about actually doing the question part of it by turning the titles, headings, or subheadings into questions, you are creating for yourself your own study quiz. So at the end, if you then read the questions back to yourself, can you answer them without referencing your notes? It's a really great way to consolidate your knowledge, check how much you know, and then also what a great way for you to practice studying later, spaced retrieval in increasing intervals of time. That's actually the review part that's coming at the end. Then you actually start to read the material. You look for the answers to questions you first raised. Answer the questions that are at the beginning or the end of the chapter or in the study guides. Reread the captions under the pictures. Be sure to pay particular attention to words that are underlined, italicized, or bold. Study the graphic aids. I had the worst habit of just completely ignoring the graphic aids. I don't know why, but I regret it. So I do recommend you take the time to actually look at the examples they provide. Reduce your speed for difficult passages. If there's unfamiliar jargon or vocabulary or particularly complex abstract concepts, go ahead and reduce your speed. It'll give your turtle brain that much more time to keep up and process what you are reading. Read only a section at a time and recite what you have read after each section. That's a really great way of checking, wait, did I actually just absorb anything I read or was I just passively reading again? It doesn't have to be a long or detailed summary, but after every paragraph or after every page, can you condense what you have just read in a sentence, in 3 sentences? It kind of leads us right into recite. After you've read a section, orally ask yourself questions about what you've just read or summarize in your own words what you just read. Paraphrasing, putting something into your own words, taps into the active cognitive process and it turns reading from a passive endeavor to active. And it's so important to, as you're taking notes about what you read, write the notes in your own words. Don't write it verbatim. Importantly, the more senses you use while reading, the more you will remember what you have read. So, triple strength encoding is reading it out loud. You see it, you say it, you hear it. See it, say it, hear it. Quadruple strength learning is read it out loud, see it, say it, hear it, and write it. And in other videos, I'll show you a couple of writing graphics that are evidence-based that will really help whip you into shape in terms of the productivity of how you take notes. The third R in SQ3R is review, which is an ongoing process. We know that cramming right before an exam is not a great way to study. All you're doing is essentially stuffing it into your short-term memory, then barfing it back up. But you want that information to go to your long-term memory because presumably, if you're being tested on it, it's information you're going to need to use later. So we want to review the information at increasing intervals of time. So the R gives you a suggested timeline for how to do that. Here are my sources where I got this information from. And if you're more of a flowchart person, I found this handy little graphic for you that'll help prompt you step by step. And here's the source for that. When I first learned this tool, I was a little bit skeptical. I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot of work to do to just read something. Reading is hard enough. Am I really going to do these 12 steps to turn it into an active process? I can totally relate if you're having that thought or feeling. I will say, however, that it's one thing to learn about it and another thing to actually execute it. And once you actually do it, you'll find that the S and Q portions of the SQ3R really don't take that long. They're not meant to be super in-depth and super detailed. And the more you practice, the faster you will get at it and the more efficient you will become at it. So really the S and Q should only take you a few minutes. And by simply doing that, you are actually helping yourself because instead of having to reread the same thing 7 times, you are actually going to absorb it and remember it and organize it much more robustly by turning it into this active process than if you just try to read it passively. And odds are you're not going to have to study as hard later because you've already put in the work as you were learning it. You're just going to have to refresh your memory later. That's the SQ3R. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for Cornell notes and my video and article summary sheets.